HSAs, health savings accounts. In this video, I'm going to talk about what they are, the different ways they can be used, the tax advantages, the eligibility requirements, and why I think HSAs are the first account to prioritize after maximizing your employer 401k match. Since I don't particularly like the HSA provider that my employer's chosen, I'll also share my strategy on how I'm using my HSA towards the end of the video. So what is an HSA? A health savings account is kind of like a 401k or an IRA or a checking account in that it is a bucket that you put money into. Once you put money into that bucket, there are different things that you can do with it. People generally use their HSA in one of two ways. About 95% of people who have HSAs use it to pay for medical expenses as those expenses come up. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with this approach, but only about 5% of people who have HSAs use the money in it to invest. If you don't have a lot of medical expenses currently, and you can afford to pay for those expenses out of pocket, when you contribute into your HSA, you can invest the money that's in there. So rather than it sitting as cash where it might earn a couple cents per month, you can invest it in a mutual fund or a stock or ETF that might grow at about 8 to 10% per year. So over the course of decades, tens of thousands of dollars of contributions will become hundreds of thousands of dollars of gains. Once you open an HSA and you have medical expenses that come up after the HSA has been open, if you save the receipts and bills for these services but pay for them out of pocket in the moment, years down the road, once the HSA money has grown much larger due to compound interest, you can reimburse yourself out of your HSA. You should save your receipts. You don't need to submit your receipts to reimburse yourself, but if the IRS audits you, you do need to provide those receipts. The reality is most Americans are going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical expenses throughout their lifetime. This is a foregone conclusion. So if that's the case, why don't we try and grow as much tax-free money as we can so that as these things come up, we don't end up getting derailed financially because we can't afford to pay for it. When you contribute to your HSA, the default is that it's going to sit there as cash. It's not going to get automatically invested until you set that up. You can have multiple HSAs across multiple custodians, but across all of these accounts, you're limited to $3,850 in contributions for the year 2023. For 2024, that's going to go up to $4,150. And if you're on a family plan, then you can contribute twice that amount. I want to stress that the IRS puts contribution limits on different kinds of accounts, and the relative contribution limits should indicate to you how powerful those accounts can be. For people who are not old enough to qualify for catch-up contributions, for the year 2023, we were limited to $22,500 for a 401k, $6,500 for an IRA, and $3,850 for an HSA. If you use your HSA incorrectly, you will pay a 20% penalty fee on your withdrawals, as well as having to pay taxes. Don't use your HSA incorrectly. If you use your HSA correctly, you're going to get 4 different tax advantages. The first advantage is that your contributions are not subject to income tax. The second advantage is that it's tax deferred. As the value of my account grows, I don't have to pay any kind of capital gains taxes. The third advantage is if you pull money out of your HSA for qualified medical expenses, it comes out tax-free. The possible fourth advantage is if you contribute through a payroll deduction, meaning you have money withheld from your paycheck, you also avoid FICA taxes, which are Social Security and Medicare taxes. To be eligible to contribute to an HSA, you have to be covered under what's called a high deductible health plan, or an HDHP. For the year 2023, the IRS defined an HDHP as a health plan that has a minimum deductible of $1,500 and a maximum annual deductible and out-of-pocket of $7,500. You can't be on Medicare, you can't be claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return, and you generally can't be covered under other health benefit plans. There are a couple exceptions to this, so if you think those might apply to you, double check this on the IRS website just to be sure. It's worth mentioning there is a thing called an FSA, which is a flexible spending account. You can't contribute to an HSA if you also have an FSA. With an FSA, the money is either a use it or lose it situation at the end of the year. With an HSA, that money follows you for life. It is always yours. You might not always be eligible to contribute to an HSA, but once you have an HSA, it is yours. If eligible, you may set up an HSA through your employer or individually. If you're not sure if you're covered under an HDHP, if you're not sure if your company offers HSA contributions, if you're not sure whether you can contribute to an HSA through your paycheck, start by talking to your HR manager or whomever is in charge of payroll. The reason I think HSAs are the first account to prioritize is because of how tax advantaged they are. With Roth accounts, we pay taxes on the money up front, but then we don't pay taxes when we take the money out later. With traditional accounts, like traditional 401ks or traditional IRAs, we get a tax break in the year that we contribute, but then when we go to pull the money out later, we pay taxes then. With HSAs, if we use them correctly, we're not taxed on the front end or the back end. There are no required minimum distributions. So if you're doing well, you don't have to pull the money out at any point. You can let it grow for as long as you want. My employer contributes a little bit of money each paycheck into an HSA for me that's managed by Health Equity. I'm not incredibly fond of Health Equity for a couple of reasons. One, they force me to hold $1,000 in cash in my account before I can invest. Since I don't plan on using this money anyways, that's just a waste to me. I could be investing that $1,000 instead. I don't want it to sit there as cash. The second reason I don't like them is because the options for what you can invest in are incredibly limited. There are about 10 to 20 different mutual funds that you can choose from. And while they're okay, I want a little bit more freedom than that. The third reason I don't like Health Equity is because they charge a small percentage on my investments. I think it's something like 0.03%, which does not sound like a lot. But if you consider that this is an account you're going to have over the course of decades, those fees are really going to add up over time. So we want to try and minimize the fees as much as we can. So what do? I contribute through my paycheck so that I avoid FICA taxes like Social Security and Medicare. Once that money hits my Health Equity account, I will have Health Equity transfer that money to Fidelity for me. So about every month or every other month, I'll take about 5 minutes and log on to Health Equity's website and fill out a partial transfer form. And within about 2 to 3 weeks, Health Equity will have sent the funds to my Fidelity HSA. I like Fidelity a lot more. They don't charge me any fees on my investments. They don't force me to hold any amount as cash if I don't want to. And I can buy anything that's traded on the stock market. When the money hits my Fidelity account, I just dollar cost average into VTI. VTI is the Vanguard Total Market Index ETF. It has a really low expense ratio and it owns the entire stock market. So it's self-cleansing. When companies go bankrupt, they fall off of that list. When other companies are growing and thriving, they are on that list. HSAs might not be for everybody. In order to be able to be eligible to contribute to an HSA, you have to be on a high deductible health plan, which means you're paying a low premium. If you have frequent or high medical bills or any kind of chronic condition where you have a high amount of medical bills regularly, you might be better off by being on a higher premium, lower deductible plan so that you end up spending less money before your insurance starts to pay for it. Since I have relatively good health, I choose the low premiums, and then I'm choosing to invest the money that's in my HSA rather than use it. When you become eligible for health insurance at your job, or when it's time for open enrollment and for you to review and or make changes to your benefits, consider where you're at in life. Are you planning on having a child? Do you have high medical bills? Do you have a chronic condition? And then take that into account when you're choosing medical plans.